On inflation, are you concerned, Minister, that this might be here for longer than what the ECB is expecting?
I think that we are facing a level of inflation that is directly linked to the very strong economic recovery. So our assessment remains the same. It is a temporary increase of the inflation. We are, of course, very vigilant on the level of inflation. But once again, there is no matter of concern about that. We are vigilant, but we make a direct link between the level of growth, the very strong economic recovery, and the level of inflation. Just maybe one word on the question of energy, which will be at the core of our discussion today within the Eurogroup. And this is the first time that the finance ministers will deal with that issue, which has become clearly a key issue for all of us, for our citizens and for the private companies. You know that the gas price has massively and brutally increased over the last weeks. It is clearly a matter of huge concern for all of us. It is unfair, it is inefficient, and it is very costly. Unfair, efficient, and very costly, first of all for our citizens, and especially for the poorest European citizens, and unfair, inefficient, and very costly for our private companies. So there is a need to act, and there is a need to take decisions. You know that the French Prime Minister already took some very strong decisions. He has decided to freeze the gas price in France, and this is the national response we want to give to this matter of concern. But it is also time to have a European response, and it is time to have a look at the European energy market. The European energy market has one key advantage. It secures the supplies of energies everywhere in Europe, in all countries, at all times. This is clearly one of the key advantages of the European energy market. But it has also one major downside, which is the alignment of electricity prices on the gas price. And clearly this is totally inefficient, and we can no longer accept to have the electricity prices being aligned on the gas price. Because on the economic side, this is clearly not the best way of having the right level of prices for electricity. And as far as the climate change is concerned, we cannot have more and more consumption of electricity and the price of electricity being totally dependent on the price of gas. This is clearly a dead end for the fight against climate change. So there is a need to act. And France today, together with some other member states, I think, for instance, on Spain with my friend Nadia Calvino, will make very concrete proposals. Two key proposals. The first one is to have a better regulation of the gas market and the gas stock. This is the first proposal France will make. We need to improve the regulation of gas stocks. The second one is to have a direct link between the average cost of production of electricity in every country and the price paid by the consumer. For instance, by having long-term contracts or regulated tariffs. You know that some of the member states have regulated tariffs and long-term contracts. We think that this could be a very good model to have this direct link between the average cost of production of electricity and the price paid by the consumer. These are the two key proposals that we want to discuss today together with our Spanish friends and some other member states. A very last point, just to recall that if we want to have electricity and electricity supplies without emitting more CO2, we strongly believe that the nuclear production is one of the key responses we could give to that situation.
And Mr. Le Maire, on that point, of course, your country, this is well known, has a different energy mix compared to neighbors. Do you fear that to some extent this validates that the French system actually works better than those that do not use nuclear?
I think that thanks to the French model, we have more independence And this is key to be independent. It is key for France. This is key also for all European countries. We don't want to be dependent on the supplies coming from foreign countries. That's the key point. And that's at the core of the French model. And the second point on which I want to insist is that the fact that we have nuclear plants allow us to have electricity without emitting CO2. And if we want to be successful in the fight against climate change, we need the nuclear production, we need the nuclear plants, and we need to invest more in nuclear energy.
And you mentioned foreign countries, I guess that means Russia, but I just wanted to close this. Does it mean that perhaps the energy market in Europe should look less German and more French?
I think it should look more European, which means more independent. And we just have to come back to the situation of our citizens, to the situation of our companies. This is something, the situation that we are facing today is unbearable. Unbearable for our citizens, unbearable for the private companies. So there is a need to change, and there is a need to address the situation of the energy European market, because it is not fitted for what we want to achieve, which is the climate change and the fight against climate change.
But on that note, on the high energy prices, some ministers are skeptical when it comes to intervening at all. They say it's just temporary. What do you say about that?
They should say the same to our fellow citizens. They should say the same to our poorest citizens, which are facing an unbearable increase of gas prices. They should say that to the people that are paying between 400 and 500 euros more each year because of the level of gas prices. They should explain that to the private companies that are facing problem of competitiveness because of the increase of gas. The statu quo cannot be the response of European countries to the increase of gas prices everywhere in Europe. The statu quo is never the right solution.
Do you think that it will be hard to explain to consumers in Europe that the green transition is actually something that the bloc needs?
I think that behind the discussion that we will have today, there is a situation that we should explain to all our citizens, and that's why we need to address that issue, which is that there will be a long-term increase in energy prices because of the environmental transition. During some years, and I'm not speaking about months, I'm speaking about years, we will have to face an increase in the level of prices because there is a need for more electricity. There is that link that is currently made between the price of electricity and the price of gas. And there is also the need to invest more in renewable energies and maybe nuclear plants. This means a lot of money that will be put on the table and that will be required. So since we all know that we will have to face a long-lasting increase of the energy prices, we need to address the issue at the level of the finance ministers and at all other levels, because this will be one of the major political issues for the next years. I'm not speaking about months, I'm speaking about years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.